It comes to my attention every single time that Brock Purdy throws an interception that Brock Purdy is the first quarterback in NFL history to not be allowed to throw a pick. We need some perspective here because this conversation has gotten absolutely out of control. So I went ahead and I did the research. Brock Purdy has 34 interceptions through his first 40 career NFL starts. I looked at the first 40 NFL career starts of a handful of other quarterbacks, some of them Purdy's contemporaries, some of them Hall of Famers in the past, all interesting names. And I came up with some very, very interesting data. We're going to delve into all of that right now, starting with a couple comparisons that truly jumped off the screen to me. Through 40 career starts, Brock Purdy has 13 fewer interceptions than Matthew Stafford had. Stafford was at 47 picks. That's a lot through 40 career starts. And Purdy is at the same exact place as Tom Brady through those 40 career starts. The reason that I bring this up, and you know me, I like looking at more advanced statistics. I think just raw interception numbers in a vacuum don't tell us much, but I feel that I have to dumb this down because the hand-wringing every single time that Brock Purdy throws an interception, the pearl clutching, the prisonership of the moment. Prisonership's probably not a word, but people are such prisoners of the moment whenever he throws a pick, acting as if he's the first quarterback to ever do it. And then the nerve to suggest that he should be benched when other quarterbacks are not held to the same standard. I mean, Purdy probably should be held to a lower standard because he was pick number 262 in the draft. I get it. He's been paid now. I'm one of those people that looks at every quarterback objectively. I'm just going to look at the numbers. I'm going to look at the production. Obviously, we watch the tape. I take the draftism out of it. People have not been able to do that. Instead, Purdy has been punished for being a lower pick, even though he's performed better in interceptions, efficiency, and many other things than many higher picks. And for whatever reason, the opposite of that is acknowledged. So that's why we're here today, to highlight that Brock Purdy is apparently the only quarterback in NFL history not allowed to throw interceptions. Let's go to the full list. Kurt Warner the other day talked about the fact that he threw a lot of interceptions and he saw a lot of himself in Brock Purdy, a lot of his style of play in Brock Purdy, throwing with a lot of touch. And Warner theorized that his football was catchable not only for offensive players, but also for defensive players. He says that there aren't a lot of dropped picks for Brock Purdy, who does push the ball downfield very, very aggressively. My criticism of the game against the Carolina Panthers was that he was pushing it downfield too aggressively over those 3 interceptions on 3 drives. Anyway, Tom Brady had 34 interceptions through his first 40 games. And anybody who remembers Tom Brady's career knows that he was the epitome of a game manager early in his career. Those Patriots teams had great defenses. Brady was not tasked with doing a whole lot as far as taking aggressive risks downfield. Quite the opposite of Brock Purdy, who has just been slinging it for the 49ers ever since 2022, especially once he got his feet fully wet in the offense and comfortable. Brock Purdy has truly been uncorking aggressive passes far down the field. He's been the opposite of a game manager. So the fact that Purdy and Brady both have 34 picks through their first 40 NFL starts, that shows you how good of a start to a career Brock Purdy has had, given the style that he's played with. Remember, this is a quarterback who led the league and was nearly historic with some of his 2023 numbers in yards per attempt, adjusted net yards per attempt, which is also going to factor in interceptions, DVOA, EPA, everything that you want to do. The more advanced stats, which mean more, Brock Purdy has actually scored very, very well in since joining the league in 2022. Interception rates have declined over time, just in general across the league. That's obviously really important to bring up, as the rules have tended to favor the offense more. But this is not an in-depth study of interception rates. This is just a demonstration of perspective. Joe Montana is the most famous perspective we can provide, especially for 49ers history. He had 37 picks through his first 34 games. Joe Montana threw several interceptions in that 1981 season NFC Championship game. 3 picks before he threw his touchdown pass to Dwight Clark. That's something that I've brought up in the past, but it's something that I have to bring up again. Tom Brady, over the course of his career, not just the first 40 starts, had 6 games with 4 interceptions. Nobody was calling for Tom Brady to be benched. Maybe the crazy Boston media was, but that's the Boston media. That's the ecosystem everywhere. I'm here to call out the insanity. Quarterbacks have bad games. Quarterbacks throw interceptions. Quarterbacks should be taking chances. One of the bigger red flags is a quarterback who doesn't throw any interceptions. That probably means that he's just handing the ball off or checking the ball down all game. I would advocate, because, and I've been very consistent about this, I've talked about this up on the San Francisco Standard, and you should go ahead and read the grades from the game on Monday night are up there. I would advocate for Brock Purdy to rein things back this year, not necessarily because of a toe injury or any of that, but because the 49ers' offensive goals should change given the fact that their defense is so shorthanded. They're playing with a hampered defense right now. I've been talking about hog the ball ever since week 5 against the Rams, and the 49ers did an awesome job of hogging the ball and beating what looks to be the best team in football with a skeleton crew. That was awesome, that Thursday night at SoFi Stadium. If the 49ers had aimed for an explosive pass game that night with a shorthanded roster against the Rams, they, would have run into the buzzsaw of that Rams defensive line. They would have opened up way too many pass rushing opportunities for LA. And B, they would have overexposed their defense, which was gassed and on its final legs by the end of that game. Somehow, some way, Alfred Collins was able to knock the ball, punch it out from Kyron Williams, and the entire horde of 49ers defenders was able to stonewall Williams on 4th down in overtime. And when I say somehow, some way, I'm fairly confident saying that one of the ways that the 49ers did that was by shielding the defense earlier in the game, so they had just a little bit of gas left in the tank to deliver the plays late. Which means that when you're dealing with what the 49ers are right now defensively, I know they're coming off their best game of the season, but I think that we can all be realistic about where the 49ers are at defensively. When you're dealing with that setup, keeping that defense on the sideline for as long as possible is your one pathway to beating really good football teams. So you hog the ball if you're the 49ers. And by hogging the ball, if that's your set goal, then maybe you rein it back a little bit on some of the aggressiveness downfield. That's where I disagreed with the decisions that not only Brock Purdy made on the 3 interceptions, or at least 2 of the interceptions, but also I disagreed with some of Kyle Shanahan's play calling, like the 1st and 10 play action pass from the 8-yard line with the 49ers firmly in control after the first drive and picking up 4 to 5 yards at a time whenever they wanted to. I think the 49ers need to be a little bit more focused on possession this year than explosiveness. I think that's something they naturally gravitated to when Mac Jones was the quarterback. That's how they did beat the Rams. And I think that same focus needs to apply to Purdy. He's obviously more explosive than Mac Jones. Because of that, he's more efficient than Mac Jones. Purdy still ranks number 8 in EPA. Mac Jones is number 12. So the 49ers still have 2 very good performers at quarterback. That's even including the 3 interceptions for Brock Purdy against Carolina. But I think that the 49ers need to wait for the explosiveness to come to them instead of seeking it out. Wait until a couple of productive, low-risk drives are in the book. And by low risk, I mean higher percentage, shorter plays. Or it could be a longer play too, but no forced passes over the middle. Forced comes with a stigma. I would say no. It's hard to find the right word, but the way that Purdy deals with some of the anticipatory throws, some of the layered, feathered passes over the middle of the field, the 49ers and Purdy are rolling the dice with those throws. There are going to be interceptions at some point, kind of like Kurt Warner threw a lot of interceptions in his NFL career. We could put Warner's numbers up on the screen. Those throws come with greater risk. They obviously deal you greater reward if they're executed. But there's a time and the place to increase the risk for greater reward. And I don't think that the 49ers actually ever ran into that time and place against the Carolina Panthers. Now, to beat some of the better teams on this schedule, they're going to probably have to change the risk-reward calculus. They're going to have to add a little bit more risk because they're going to need a little bit more reward. But everything is going to be based on context for the 49ers and for Brock Purdy as far as how many chances are they taking. Anyway, let's go back to interceptions over the first 40 starts of a career. Kurt Warner, 47. Only Brett Favre is higher on this list. Matthew Stafford, Kurt Warner, and Brett Favre all threw at least 47 interceptions, 48 for Brett Favre, who was a true interception machine over the course of his career, the most interceptions in NFL history. Those guys were all near 50 picks over their first 40 NFL starts. Brock Purdy at 34. Now, as interception rates have gone down over time, you could see that some of the modern era guys are a little bit lower. Joe Burrow at 29, Josh Allen at 31, Justin Herbert at 30. Purdy, though, at 34, not all that much higher than that. And it all serves as an illustration that all quarterbacks throw picks. There's no better way to broadcast low football IQ than to overreact to interceptions thrown by NFL quarterbacks. I mean, that's the immediate red flag when somebody overreacts to interceptions thrown by NFL QBs and start acting as if the picks any given quarterback, Brock Purdy or somebody else, throws are the first picks ever thrown in the history of the game. And a lot of fans, a lot of media will emotionally act that way. That is the telltale sign of a low football IQ. That's the telltale sign of somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, can't put anything into context. Interceptions are going to happen. It is a chaotic sport. Now, obviously, you would like to minimize them, but this is another area where I think that Brock Purdy is not correctly evaluated. People act like he exploded in interception rate in 2024. Well, I've got some news for you. Brock Purdy's 2023 interception rate was 2.5%. This was the 2023 season when he was an MVP finalist. So what do you think that Brock Purdy's 2024 interception rate was? I'm going to take some guesses before I put it up on the screen. Purdy in 2023 threw 11 picks in 444 attempts. What do you think his 2024 interception rate was? This is kind of an experiment because the popular narrative is that Brock Purdy had a terrible 2024 where he just started turning the ball over at an extremely higher rate than 2023. I want you guys in the comment section here on YouTube to guess Brock Purdy's 2024 interception rate. It was 2.5% in 2023. All right, we got people saying Brock was terrible last year. Give me some data. What was the interception rate? Since interceptions are so important to you, what was Brock Purdy's interception rate in 2024? I want to see some guesses. It was 2.5% in 2023. I think everyone has to agree that he was really good in 2023. I know at the time people were trying to discount it, but I mean, that debate that ship has sailed. Brock Purdy in 2023 was an MVP finalist. Anybody with a functional brain will acknowledge that he was really damn good in that season. All right, so Brock Purdy's interception rate in 2024 increased to 2.6%. A negligible increase. He threw one more pick. He threw 12 picks in 2024, but he also had 11 more pass attempts in 2024. So from 444 to 455. The fact that Purdy saw his interception rate increase only 0.1% from 2023 to 2024, despite the fact that the 49ers defense and run game both fell off a cliff from 2023 to 2024, I would actually argue is a relative reduction in interception rate, because when you're ahead and when your team is running the football effectively, it is a lot easier to avoid interceptions. Yet the interception rate was nearly identical in 2024 when Brock Purdy had way less support around him. So obviously he's thrown a lot of picks this year. He's thrown 7 through his 4 games here in 2025. But it's still a small sample. He still needs more time to have at least a half a season so we could see exactly where this is going. I understand that there are concerns about the toe injury, although I think a lot of people become medical experts as soon as something uncomfortable happens in their viewing experience and they see an interception. Immediately they want to explain why. So immediately they start saying, oh, it looks like his toe is bothering him. It's like, you don't know anything about throwing mechanics. You wouldn't be able to tell what a healthy throw versus a slightly unhealthy throw due to the toe is. It's confirmation bias 101. You want there to be an explanation. So you go back retroactively and you say, oh, that must be why that interception happened. I knew it. That's not a scientific way to look at anything. And if you're just going to use confirmation bias in your NFL analysis and your NFL viewing experience, then you're going to end up being wrong about a whole bunch of different things because there are a ton of variables at the NFL level. There are a ton of variables in the game of football to begin with. And when that's the case, analysis becomes extremely muddied unless you're very careful to maintain objectivity. If you're trying to get the quick answer, the hot take, you're not going to be correct about things in football all too often. And I think that so much of the Brock Purdy analysis is just rooted in lazy takes. I've seen it from the very beginning that seem to just go all the way back to the fact that he was picked number 262 in that 2022 NFL draft. Anyway, I want to go back to the list because there's so many interesting quarterbacks on here. We know that Favre was an INT machine that just took a bunch of chances through his NFL career. Josh Allen is a fascinating one to me because you've got Josh Allen on here with 31 interceptions over his first 40 NFL starts. That's where Brock Purdy is right now. Allen's interception rate actually increased after his first 40 NFL starts. He became a better, more efficient quarterback, but his interception rate actually went up. I'm going to put this up on the screen for you. We're going to look at Josh Allen's Pro Football Reference page. I just have to get this copied and paste it. Get the screenshot ready. Move it to here. All right, here are Allen's numbers. As you can see in 2018, sorry, I have to redo this. I sorted it by interception rate. That wasn't smart because it put the years in different order. So we're going to get another version of this. This one should be much more useful for us. All right, here we go. So starting in 2018, Josh Allen had a bad interception rate as a rookie. He played in 12 games. He threw 12 picks. 3.8% interception rate is not good. Higher than even Brock Purdy's 2024 rate of 2.6%. League average right now is about 2.3%, by the way. Allen then started cutting down on his picks, and he hit start number 40 about midway through the 2020 season. And in 2020, I remember the Bills beating the 49ers when the 49ers were hosting games in Arizona that year. Allen was really good. He got the interception rate down to 1.7%. But then over 2021, 2022, and 2023, look at this. Allen threw interception column 15, 14, and 18 picks, respectively, over those 3 seasons. I'm going to do some quick math in my head. That's 29 plus 18. He threw 29. Wow. He threw 47 picks over a 3-season stretch right here. 2021, 2022, 2023. Those seasons, Josh Allen already known league-wide as one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the league. Now, what's really helped Josh Allen lately, it did help him a lot in 2024, was the interception reduction down to 6 and only a 1.2% interception rate. We're looking at the numbers right there. This season, though, the INT rate has gone back up to 2.8% for Josh Allen. So he's throwing interceptions again. It all lends back to my big point. It's that every single NFL quarterback throws interceptions. It is inevitable. The most impressive name on this list, or the most impressive performance on the list that I prepared for you, is Patrick Mahomes. Over the course of his first 40 starts, Patrick Mahomes threw only 19 picks. As you can see, way less than anybody else on here. But even Mahomes has thrown interceptions. We could look at Mahomes' season by season interception rate. There have actually been worse seasons since his absolutely electric career start. In fact, this is making me curious. I'm going to type in Patrick Mahomes on Pro Football Reference, and we can take a look. Got to get the season-by-season stats for Patrick Mahomes. All right, this is going to be good. Mahomes has been good at avoiding interceptions relative to other quarterbacks over the course of his NFL career. But as you'll see, he has not been perfect. Nobody's perfect, which is why living and dying with your analysis by each Brock Purdy interception is moronic, low IQ football stuff. Low football IQ stuff. Mahomes started his career, these seasons up through 2020 were absolutely awesome. 2019 and 2020, a 1% interception rate. That is extremely low. Led the league in 2020 with the 1% interception rate. But then, in recent years, 2023 especially, it more than doubled from that point to 2.3%. He's reined it in, and he's still very good. He's under 2%. But even in these seasons where, he's coming off of a 6 total interception season and a 5 total interception season, he's in double digits through 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Even Mahomes throws picks. He's probably going to end up in double digits here in 2025. Steve Young had 5 3-interception games in his career, and he retired as the most highly rated passer in NFL history. If you adjust passer rating by era, Steve Young, I believe, is still at the top, number 1. Obviously, it gets better over time because of the rules tending to skew toward favoring the offense. But Steve Young generally avoided interceptions. Steve Young still had 5 3-INT games in his career. As we know, Tom Brady, awesome quarterback, arguably the greatest of all time. 49ers fans can argue between him and Joe Montana. Tom Brady had 6 4-interception games in his career. I mean, people act as if Brock Purdy didn't turn around after his 4-interception game against Baltimore in 2023 and didn't turn around and light up Washington the very next week, and then lead the 49ers through the NFC playoffs with an awesome performance. Yeah, I think in both games, down the stretch against the Packers, he led the game-winning drive in the rain, but then to bring the 49ers back from 17 points down against the Detroit Lions in the NFC title game was massively impressive, and then he played a clean game in the Super Bowl. So it's not like he's the first quarterback to throw multiple picks in one game. And if he bounces back from this, I think as any reasonable observer would expect him to bounce back from this in the long run, it wouldn't be his first time bouncing back from a multi-interception game. This stuff happens in the league, and acting like it doesn't is just purely ignorant. And I get that people want their hot takes and people want to be prisoners of the moment because I guess that's more fun or it makes you sound cool on Twitter. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just care about objectively giving you context and the truth. And when you look at actual interception counts for NFL quarterbacks, and I could go look up other guys if you want me to. If you have a name that you want me to look up, I'll go ahead and do it. But I just, these are the first few names that came to mind. Peyton Manning, I totally missed Peyton Manning's name in here, even though I added this one up. He has 51 interceptions. He had 51 through his first 40 NFL starts. I mean, Manning early on was an INT machine. And then he was able to whittle down that interception rate over the course of his career. In fact, we should look up Peyton Manning's career interception rates to see how those lowered season by season, because obviously he did a much better job as he got older to avoid INTs. I'm looking up Manning right now. Wow, he had a long career. It takes a lot of screen to see Peyton Manning's interception rate numbers, but I've got it ready and we're going to move it up here. So this is Peyton. Interception rate is on the far right of the screen. I mean, he started his career at 4.9% as a rookie, threw 28 picks as a rookie. 2.8%, 2.6%. So by his third year, Peyton Manning had dipped down to Brock Purdy 2024 level interception rate. Remember, Purdy in 2024 was at 2.6%. So this is Peyton Manning in 2000 was at 2.6%. But in 01, at age 25, Manning went back up to 4.2%. In 02, he was at 3.2%. I mean, these are 2001, Peyton Manning threw 23 interceptions. 23. He had 2 seasons over his first 4 years where he had over 20 interceptions in a season. It wasn't until 2003, which for Peyton Manning was year 6, that he posted an interception rate under 2%. So just let your mind marinate in that. He was only under 2% twice in his NFL career. Now, he did stabilize, twice in his Indianapolis career. He did find a way under 2% with the Denver Broncos in 2 of the seasons, and then it got worse there toward the end for Peyton Manning. But he only stabilized after quite a bit of time in the NFL. And I think that the main point here is that no quarterback, especially somebody like Brock Purdy, who has only 40 career starts, is a finished product. And Purdy, unlike so many of the other QBs who people are so quick to crown elite or so quick to say, oh, this is a franchise guy, I'm thinking Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Purdy actually has a resume that's more impressive than those guys. So he should get just as much, if not more, benefit of the doubt. Purdy has actually won an NFC championship game where he put the team on his back. 17 points. That's how much the 49ers trailed the Detroit Lions by. They weren't playing defense in that game. The 49ers weren't playing run defense in that game. Brock Purdy had to will his team to victory, and he had to use his legs, and he had to use his arm to do it. He was an MVP finalist in 2023. He was number 7 QBR in 2024. So a lot of people want to pretend that this wasn't a good quarterback in 2024. It's patently false. Like, facts matter more than your feelings. And you know what matters in the game of football is the entire team. If your defense falls to number 29 against the run, like the 49ers did in 2024, there is not a single quarterback in NFL history who would be able to produce a winner with that type of supporting cast. Plug any QB into the 49ers 2024 situation, and you almost certainly have a losing record. They weren't running the ball well. They weren't defending the run, which is the most important variable. They totally lost control of all games. They had the worst special teams in the entire league. All those things fell off of a cliff. Nobody's saying that Purdy played well on Monday night, but the 49ers have good special teams this year, and that phase of the game didn't fail them. The defense played its best game of the year. That helped bail Purdy out, lead the 49ers to victory. But even if they had lost that game, the takes that this would have been the first time that a quarterback had played poorly to lose his team the game would have been insufferable. And they would have operated with total ignorance to the fact that Joe Montana, through multiple pick games that lost 49ers games, that Steve Young had bad performances with interceptions that lost the 49ers games. I mean, this is life of quarterback in the NFL. And Brock Purdy just deserves to be treated through the same lens as the other quarterbacks, period. All you want is objectivity, right? It's all you can ask for is objectivity, but apparently that is too much to ask for from what seems to be the vast majority of commentators today. They just can't be objective about Brock Purdy. I don't know what it is. They can't be objective about what's right in front of them. Up on the San Francisco Standard right now, I've got 49ers grades. I go through everything. As you can see there, that is Jair Brown. That's his second interception. Speaking of interceptions, Bryce Young threw 2 of them against the 49ers, and San Francisco finally getting on that takeaway train, which is going to be very important. They currently are, I think, -6 in turnover differential this season. And that ranks in that bottom quadrant of the NFL. It's something they're desperately trying to turn around, because the fact that they're 8-4, despite that negative turnover differential, is absolutely insane. One of the reasons that they're at that spot is because they've been playing decently good red zone defense. It was electric against the Carolina Panthers. They have awesome special teams this year. That's helped fill some of the gap, pick up some of the slack. They're doing a lot of things at the margins really well, better than you would expect them to, given their efficiency elsewhere. But boy, would the 49ers like to develop a bigger margin for error moving forward. My grades, I gave Brock Purdy a C- in this game. Why did I give him a C- and not an F, you ask? Well, because he actually scored above average efficiency for the 49ers. This is one thing. Anybody who looks at touchdown to interception ratio and tries to use TD to interception ratio to prove some kind of point really doesn't know what they're talking about. Touchdowns and interceptions make up a very small percentage of a quarterback's overall game. Say that a quarterback has, I'm looking at Peyton Manning's stats right now, so I could see his best touchdown percentage was 9.9%, which is absurdly high, by the way. And his interception rate that year was 2%. So touchdowns and interceptions combined for 12% of Peyton Manning's throws. That was in 2004. That was Peyton Manning's best season. People were comparing Brock Purdy's 2023 season, by the way, in terms of adjusted net yards per attempt and some of the advanced stats, to Peyton Manning's 2004 season. That's how good Purdy was in 2023. Statistically, they weren't all that different. You look at some other seasons for Manning where he had a higher touchdown or a higher interception rate. Maybe his rookie season, 4.9%. His touchdown percentage was 4.5%. Those two are going to add up to a little bit over 9%. So in general, I think it's safe to say that about 9 to 11% of a quarterback's throws are either touchdowns or interceptions. So if you're using touchdown to interception ratio to evaluate quarterbacks, you are literally taking only about 10% of a quarterback's pass attempts to make a broad judgment. Why would you cut out the other 90% of passes? I get it that touchdowns are important. I get it that interceptions are important. But there's a lot else happening in the other 90% of attempts that needs to be accounted for. That's why we look at more advanced numbers like expected points added, like adjusted net yards per attempt, because those are going to look at touchdowns. They're going to look at interceptions, but they're also going to look at every single pass attempt that a quarterback makes. And what it can do is it can take our biases. The eye test has biases. It takes the biases out of it and gives us what the data actually says. It's a way to quantify play on the field. So anyway, Purdy in this game against Carolina was at 0.05 EPA per play. That means the 49ers, every time Brock Purdy dropped back, were generating 0.05 points. Not a lot, but also a lot better than what Bryce Young was bringing to the table. He was at negative 0.3. Young had a rough game for the Carolina Panthers. I think that we can make this a little bit more prominent for you on the screen so you could see this EPA chart, because I think this is important. I think that recognizing advanced stats is the first step to being free of some of this terrible dialogue online. So every single time that Bryce Young dropped back to pass, the Panthers would lose 0.3 points, expected points. Total, after 37 dropbacks, you multiplied 0.3 by 11, and obviously this was negative. Bryce Young lost the Carolina Panthers 11 points on his dropbacks. Brock Purdy ultimately gained the 49ers 2 points on his dropbacks because he had a good first drive and he had a good second half. Christian McCaffrey was obviously part of that. The 49ers Good play calling on drive one and in the second half was a good part of that. But the interception drives straddling the first and the second quarters were a punch to the 49ers. Those were tough. That didn't work out for San Francisco. Let's take a look at some of the other grades from this game. That's why I gave Purdy a C-, by the way, because everything ended up evening out, and he actually performed on the aggregate a little bit in the positive. For Bryce Young, I mean, he had the touchdown pass to Tedero McMillan, but it was nowhere near enough to outweigh the negatives of his 2 interceptions, including one in the red zone that Jair Brown got. That was to nullify the first Brock Purdy interception. Wasn't enough to nullify the incompletions, just the general inefficiency that was caused by a really, really good 49ers defense. So we go C- for Purdy. We're going to go A for Christian McCaffrey. This is a cool stat for Christian McCaffrey. Forced 11 missed tackles against the Panthers, tied for the 5th most by any player in a game this season. McCaffrey leads the NFL with 83 missed tackles forced entering the Week 13 slate. That is 10 away from his 2023 career high of 93. So McCaffrey is probably going to force more missed tackles this year than he did in 2023 when he was an MVP finalist. I think that's epic. A for Christian, and side note I put here, Brian Robinson continues to run really well too. C+ for the 49ers receivers. Why is that? Well, SF Data Niners posted the receiver summary here. Kittle was their most efficient receiver. McCaffrey was their second most efficient receiver. From the wideout position, I think Jennings played a good game. Then he got hit in the balls. That was brutal toward the end, trying to defend himself there at the end. So we don't blame him for that. But Jennings was the recipient or the target, I guess I should say, on the first interception from J.C. Horn. So that hurt his EPA per target. That's in the negatives because throwing a pick into a receiver's coverage is really going to hurt that receiver's numbers on that particular play. And Ricky Pearsall, he was the target on 2 of Brock Purdy's interceptions. That's why his number is really, really low, negative 1.92. The 49ers need more positive production from the wideout position. We're going to keep our eyes on Brandon Ayuk news this week, see if the 49ers might open up that practice window. If they do, get your popcorn out because that's going to be fascinating. But, the void left behind by Brandon Ayuk is a real one, and you could see it in some of these statistics on a week-in, week-out basis. 49ers have not been good throwing to their wideout 1 and wideout 2 over the past couple of weeks. And Kittle and McCaffrey have made up for a lot of that production. But the numbers against the Carolina Panthers were a testament of what happened on those interceptions. And those interceptions happened when Brock Purdy went for one of his top 2 wide receivers. I'm going to give Kittle an A. This is a cool stat. George Kittle. Remember how the 49ers run game was struggling early this season? Weeks 1 through 6, that was without George Kittle for all but one drive. The 49ers ranked number 27 in offensive run EPA, expected points added per play. So they were the number 27 most efficient run game, bottom 5 of the NFL. Ever since George Kittle has returned, the 49ers have surged up to number 9 in terms of EPA per run. So the run game has been fixed by George Kittle's return. That's why he gets an A in our grades up on the San Francisco Standard. A for the offensive line. They're playing their best football of the season, but they also have their biggest test of the season coming up. That massive, massive test comes in the form of Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. 49ers offensive line might not have allowed a sack and was really good in its most recent game against Carolina, but look at the Browns. Number 1 in pass rush win rate, number 1 in run stop win rate. That is going to be the test of the season for 49ers O-line that's already faced the Rams D-line and the Houston Texans D-line, both really, really good fronts. B+ for the 49ers defensive line. I love this graphic because it shows you how they're constricting the pocket with Bryce Huff and Keon White. That is the goal for the 49ers. They are not jailbreak rushing this year because they don't have the personnel to win in those situations. They're just trying to contain quarterbacks by constricting the edge. And with Bryce Young and Keon White doing that, at an abnormally high proficiency level against the Panthers. You can say mission accomplished. There's a reason that Jair Brown was able to get 2 interceptions behind that 49ers pass rush. It was very, very productive for San Francisco. B+ for the linebackers. Shout out to Curtis Robinson in his first career start. That's a hell of a story. I gave the safeties an A+. I just watched the tape again, and the way that Malik Mustafa anticipated and flew toward the sideline, I believe it was Hubbard who he tackled on that one red zone play, third down play to stop Carolina. Malik is starting to play like the missile that he was before the ACL tear, and we know all about the 2 interceptions for Jair Brown, some good run stops for Jair Brown as well. That was high-quality stuff from the 49ers safeties. If they continue playing that way, this defense really can turn a corner. One thing I will say, as finally the cornerbacks a B. I thought Renardo got beaten a couple times. It's going to prevent the A grade there. But Lenore has only been given up 29 receiving yards per game. Upton Stout played his best game for the 49ers on Sunday. So Renardo getting beaten docks the score a little bit, but I'll finish with a B for the 49ers cornerbacks. The defense as a whole has ranked number 25 throughout this season. Let me leave you with this. The Rams in 2024, and we know the 49ers have been trying to emulate some of what the Rams did in 2024 in rebuilding their team. They were the number 29 defense in the NFL through the first 3 months. So up until this point, they're number 29 last year. The Rams then surged to number 5 over the final 2 months. That's what the 49ers are trying to get at here in 2025. Maybe they're not going to be able to get up to the top 10, top 5. It's not what I'm saying. No Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner, I get it. But if this defense can just be better, just take a bite out of some of the teams ahead of you in the rankings. If they could just be better to close this season, they can stabilize in the way that we've discussed that they're going to need to stabilize to become a true contender into the playoffs of 2025. For illustration, these are the arrows, right? I put this up before the game against Carolina. The defense is on the y-axis, so moving up and down. If the 49ers defense improves, they can move their logo up on this chart. We're going to assume that the offense is going to move in the right direction under Brock Purdy. Obviously, that wasn't good over those 3 interceptions against Carolina, but they won the game, and they can continue focusing on improving over where they were with Mac Jones, the backup quarterback. But that's the x-axis. That's horizontal. The y-axis is dependent on where the defense goes. It has slid since Fred Warner and Nick Bosa got hurt. Is that slide going to continue? I think when we saw them play against the Rams, the red arrow was a danger for San Francisco, but I pointed out that they were playing some bad offenses coming up in the 4 weeks after the Rams. So I said maybe they could stabilize. Maybe they can give people the blue arrow. And if the offense improves and the defense stabilizes, doesn't slide any lower, the 49ers will be in the tier of all these really good teams who people are calling Super Bowl contenders. But the one wild card, and this could be really, really good news for the 49ers, is if the defense not only stabilizes, but improves. And the fact that they put together their best performance of the season in terms of efficiency against the Panthers does show some promise as to the potential of the orange arrow. Can the 49ers actually bring their defensive score up? Because it certainly moved up with a plus 11 expected points performance, the best performance of the year against the Carolina Panthers. Can they bring it on this upward trajectory to pair with an improving offense and give the offense some margin for error and end up being in the same tier as teams like the Colts, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Packers, the Lions, the Seahawks? The one team that would be still above you even in that scenario would be the Rams. But it just so happens the 49ers have already beaten the Rams this season. Just goes to show you how wide open this league is. Rewind to the top, though. I think that a lot of people might have broken brains knowing some of these numbers. Through 40 career starts, Brock Purdy has thrown 34 picks. It's the same amount as Tom Brady. It is way less than Matthew Stafford, who had 47 career interceptions. I manually went through a lot of these numbers. I prepared this for you because I think that it's worth it. You could share this with your friends. What you should know is that Brock Purdy apparently is the only quarterback in NFL history who's not allowed to throw interceptions. Even though at this stage of their careers, Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner, Drew Brees, Steve Young, Matthew Stafford, and Brett Favre all had more interceptions than Brock Purdy does now. So chew on that for a little bit, because this league analysis is not for the faint of heart. You actually have to dig into some stuff. Operate with facts instead of feelings. Thanks for watching.